Why talk about the endings of Elden Ring? Welcome back to Club Chair Critique. My name's Logan. I've talked before about Elden Ring in my video on the themes of its expansion, Shadow of the Erdtree. In that video, I referenced some thoughts about two of Elden Ring's 6 endings, and I felt compelled to talk about them in greater depth. There is plenty of content out there decoding the lore of this game, for good reason. The kind of storytelling that From Software employs is not yet commonplace for the medium. The game's narratives are reputed to be cryptic at best and nonsensical at worst, because they don't spell out the plot in extended cinematics punctuated by gameplay. The storytelling is deployed in dialogue, character models, item descriptions, the environments themselves. You need to interact to get the story, because it's an interactive medium. To be fair, that's not a format that a lot of people are equipped to consume, and it resists the passive engagement that other media like movies and TV can enjoy. That's not a dig at those formats. Some of my best friends are movies and TV shows. They're easier to consume because they have decades of storytelling conventions that audiences are primed on. Gameplay as narrative is comparatively young, so those conventions are not yet well established. I think that's a big part of why many games that bill themselves as story-driven read more like movies with some gameplay in between. We know how to tell a story in a movie, a show, a book. So we do that instead of telling it as a game. And those games that really embrace an interactive, immersive narrative structure are frequently met with confusion. All that is to say, there is a lively content ecosystem of dedicated players that cover the lore and plot of From Software's catalog for the more casual consumers, with some occasional venturing into headcanon and theorizing. There is much less content about these games theming about what they say on a deeper level. I think that's a bit of a shame, in part because these games' narratives are intimately bound with their themes. For example, a frequent topic of lorehead debate is the exact relationship between America and Radagon. Spoilers, I guess. Is Radagon just an alter ego of Marika's, similar to using the Mimic Veil? Are they split personalities? Did he physically split from Marika to be recombined later? When did that happen? I don't think any of those theories actually matter. They might be fun to debate, but what is more important to Elden Ring is the symbolism, the dualistic opposites they represent: man and woman, fundamentalist and opportunist, mender and breaker. It shows that Marika had divided feelings on the Elden Ring and her order. When she takes Radagon as her second consort, time spent thinking about the logistics of that union is time wasted. It represents a consolidation of power after she banishes her first lord Godfrey, who has outlived his usefulness. Most lore talk misses a lot of this. There are some really good videos out there that delve beyond a surface read of games like this, and I'll link a few I'd recommend in the description. Do feel free to share more in the comments. This video and the next few will be close readings of Elden Ring in that tradition. We know what Elden Ring is about, for the most part, but I want to cover what it's about. It is a game dense with meaning from start to finish, so why talk about the endings? In online discussion and critique of Elden Ring, a common claim is that the endings are unsatisfying or anticlimactic. That may be a statement of preference in some cases, but I think it is more often a response to the game's endings being ambiguous. You, the player, get no explicit assurances that any one ending you choose is the correct choice. In every ending, one age is ended and a new one begins. Nothing else is certain. You are left to wonder what happens to the lands between and its inhabitants, to the survivors of Leyndell, the scholars of Rea Lucaria. What becomes of the misbegotten, the demi-humans, the omen? Even in the f*** burn everything down ending, there is uncertainty. Your once companion Melina stands in the ashes and vows vengeance. Does she get it? What becomes of you, the lord of an empty world, and the woman you destroyed it all for? From a surface level read, it's unclear whether in any chosen ending you really managed to save the day. whether lasting good or further evil is the result of your actions. When done well, an ambiguous ending should prompt reflection. The text avoids answering these questions so it can point them back at you. Do you think the protagonist did the right thing? Did they pursue the wisest course of action available? Who will benefit and who will suffer as the curtain falls? When the medium of storytelling is interactive, these questions carry the burden of your choice. Did you do the right thing? Who will benefit or suffer as a result of your actions? For this reason, I think of Elden Ring's endings as a Rorschach test. The ending cutscenes are brief and unsatisfying because the resolution is not the point. Your choice is. For several dozen hours, you have explored a world that is perhaps irrevocably broken, and you have fought long and hard for the power to choose how to fix it, if you think it's worth fixing at all. I think the structure of the quests for each ending supports this. You can follow the stories for any ending basically until the point where you must choose one, encouraging you to engage with their characters and philosophies, to weigh all your options before making a choice. And that choice will say a lot about you, your values, your biases, your taste in women. Spoilers ahead from here on out. That should be obvious in a video with endings in the title, but I'll give it an explicit call out for anyone watching this in the background while they eat dinner or whatever. By the way, Greg, you'll want to pop that plate of pasta back in the microwave for 30 seconds or so. It got cold while you were looking for something to watch. There are 6 different ending cutscenes, but there are basically only 3 different endings. This is implied not just by the achievements for completing the game, but by the mechanics of how you choose an ending. You can repair the Elden Ring using 2 or more of the demigod's great runes, and optionally some flavor of mending rune. You interact with the shell of a Queen Marika's body to do so, adding your runes to the Elden Ring housed within her. In these endings, you are choosing to re-establish the Golden Order with some adjustment to its laws based on the mending rune of your choice. To choose this ending is to say, the Golden Order is good, or at least good enough that our best option is to reform it. The mending rune you use says something about what you feel was wrong with the Golden Order and how to address it. You can overthrow the Golden Order by following Ranni's quest and summoning her to the Erd Tree instead of interacting with Marika. That difference in mechanics is a ludonarrative cue that you have chosen a fundamentally different solution, that any version of mending the Elden Ring and maintaining the Golden Order is inadequate for addressing the problems of the lands between. So, you turn away from Marika, from the Golden Order, to establish something new. You can burn everything down by inheriting the Flame of Frenzy, which locks you out of all other endings. Once you have decided that the world itself is broken, totally hopeless, and devoid of anything worth saving, there's no going back. Unless you
follow Millicent's quest to the Halig Tree, help her against her sisters, take the unalloyed gold needle off her body, go beat Melania to get Nicola's needle,
go to Farum Azula, defeat Dragonlord Placidusax.
You get the idea. It's difficult to overcome nihilism once you've given into it. More on that and the rest of these endings later. The endings are partitioned this way because they represent different responses to a political crisis. Among other things, Elden Ring is a story about political power, its corrupting influence, its capacity for abuse, its relationship to violence, all flavored as the struggle between outer gods and fantasy races in a high fantasy setting with a dash of cosmic horror. You, as the player, explore a world ravaged by the collapse of a violent imperialistic order, and then you are asked how you would fix it. Do you reform the broken system? Do you revolt and establish something new? Or do you abandon hope and raise it all? That framing is a little tortured, but I'm a sucker for parallelism. Speaking of which, let's dive into the reform endings. The ending cutscenes for the 4 reform endings are almost identical. In each one, you mend the Elden Ring housed within Marika, maybe using a mending rune. Then hear a voiceover repeat the first line from the opening cinematic.
The fallen leaves tell a story.
You see the Erd Tree in Leyndell with some thematic color grading based on the mending rune of your choice. Then you see you're tarnished upon the Elden Throne as the new age is announced, again based on your mending rune. The reference to the opening cinematic is key, as that first cinematic foreshadowed the choices we have for the reform endings. It names several important tarnished, showing them in turn as the guidance of Marika's grace returns to them. Hoarah Loux, the Gold Mask, Fia, the Dung Eater, and Sir Gideon Ofnir.
The all-knowing!
3 of these 5 tarnished can give you a mending rune to repair the Elden Ring. The Gold Mask embarks on a pilgrimage and discovers the mending rune of perfect order in a final revelation. Fia sacrifices herself to conceive the mending rune of the Death Prince with the living corpse of Godwyn. And you kill the Dung Eater in a reenactment of his own horrific crimes to gestate the mending rune of the Fell Curse. If the Elden Ring is symbolic of the existing system, broken and in need of repair to begin a new age, then each mending rune represents a change to that system based on its respective character's beliefs. Each character dies to create their mending rune, literally sacrificing themselves for their beliefs on how the Golden Order must change. Each of these characters and endings will get their own videos, as their respective quests provide insights into their character's beliefs and what it means to choose each ending. For the remainder of this video, let's talk about the Age of Fracture. It's tempting to think of the Age of Fracture as no more than a default filler to ensure a player can still complete the game if they haven't enabled any other endings. Mechanically, that is not untrue, but to leave the discussion there would ignore its thematic and narrative value. To frame this, consider the 2 tarnished from the intro cinematic that do not give you a mending rune, Hoarlu and Gideon.
I know in my bones a tarnished cannot become a lord. Not even you.
Gideon explicitly rejects the possibility of lordship during his boss fight, so we could interpret the Age of Fracture as Hoarlu's ending. There is more evidence to suggest this than mere process of elimination, so let's give some context for it. We know Hoarlu for most of the game as Godfrey, the first Elden Lord of the Golden Order. He does not have a quest or even a presence until his boss battle near the end of the game. But we have plenty of context to understand him as a character, and why he is thematically paired with the Age of Fracture. Godfrey is renowned for being a ferocious warrior and little else. In his iconic painting in Stormvale, he is depicted with his companion, the Beast Regent Sirach. I feel like I could talk for 20 minutes about this room in Stormvale alone. The sheer density of narrative conveyance in this portrait of Godfrey, framed with the dangling limbs of murdered tarnished, all hanging over the grotesque grafted scion. That's probably a video for another day. To focus on the portrait of Godfrey, this is high fantasy at its best. The subtext of the iconic medieval warrior king and his symbolic animal heraldry is literalized as Godfrey carrying his heraldic lion on his back. The lion as heraldic symbol is common to the point of trope. For me, the portrait evokes the heraldic lion of the English royalty, a famously violent and oppressive global empire, dignified by the noble, courageous lion. Sirach serves the same purpose for Godfrey in a more literal sense, as Godfrey carries Sirach on his back to suppress his otherwise irresistible lust for battle. But this violent nature is precisely why he was chosen to be Elden Lord. When Marika established the Golden Order, she needed to bring the other powers of the lands between to heel. Godfrey is credited with the genocide of the fire giants on Marika's orders.
Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount.
And defeated potential rivals in the lords of both Stormvale and Castle Morn. Sirach clearly isn't doing much to suppress Godfrey's warlike impulses, but he serves to reframe the violence as noble, as service to the Golden Order. The same way real-world heraldry puts a dignified, regal face on imperialistic violence. When the need for conquest was done, Godfrey was disposed of. The light of grace left his eyes, and he was sent on the long march with the rest of the Tarnished, to die in faraway lands.
My lord, and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar, where ye will live and die.
Only to be called back to the lands between if and when Marika needed them again. Godfrey is not just a genocidal warmonger, but a disposable one, committing unspeakable violence for Marika's order without question, only to be cast aside when he outlived his usefulness. Lest we blame this all on Marika, I should point out that we get some supporting evidence of Hoarlu's innate brutality from his daughter Nefeli. When we meet her at the ravaged village of the Albinorix, she tells us she witnessed senseless violence like this in her childhood.
Well, what do you make of it? What's happened to this village? I witnessed a sight much the same in my infancy. The oppression of the weak. Murder and pillage unchecked. A waking nightmare made by men.
Upon learning that Nefeli is Godfrey's daughter, or at least kin of some kind, this dialogue takes on additional meaning. When he was on the Long March and free of Marika's influence, Godfrey seems to have acted much as he did when Elden Lord, murdering and conquering the weak. It clearly influenced the young Nefeli as she pledged herself to Gideon's service and took him as her adopted father because he promised to prevent this kind of violence.
He once told me that if he became Elden Lord, he would never allow the downtrodden to be cheated ever again.
We can infer from Nefeli's experience that Hoarlu is violent by nature and abusive of any he considers weak. His ascension to Elden Lord did not civilize him so much as it redirected his violent impulses at the enemies of the Golden Order. That Marika chose him as her lord is indicative of the principles on which she founded her order: the right to rule through brutal conquest, and the subjugation of those considered weak or undesirable. And if Godfrey has his way, that's the way it will always be in the lands between.
Long and hard didst thou fight, tarnished warrior.
We finally meet Godfrey near the end of the game. We have borne witness to all the atrocities of the Golden Order, the conquest, the slavery, the genocide, and defeated powerful forces standing in the way of progress. And this asshole comes in trying to snake the victory.
Alas, I am returned.
I kid, but think of what this would mean for the lands between. Exile has not cured Godfrey of his thirst for violence, and he still deems brute strength the sole requisite for lordship. The game conveys this pretty directly during the cutscene before Phase 2 of his fight. I have such mixed feelings about this cutscene. I love this moment where Godfrey pulls Sirash off his back and murders him in cold blood. He tears away the veneer of nobility, symbolized by his heraldic companion, in this gory, unsettling act of violence, and in so doing transforms into his more warlike self, becoming ironically more animalistic after disposing of the Beast Regent. It shows us directly what the Godfrey icon talisman and his portrait in Stormvale imply, that the heraldry and opulence of imperial regimes is a facade for the same barbarism it condemns in its conquered subjects. And when you remove that facade, there is nothing left but brutal, animalistic violence. The symbolism is rich and chilling and perfect. And then you get this goofy line read that kind of undercuts it.
Now I fight as Hoarlu, warrior!
The fight afterward redeems it somewhat. Hoarlu's physicality in this fight underlines his transformation. He fights barehanded, having disposed of the axe that symbolized his vow to conduct himself as a lord. This animalistic display is the true nature of Marika's chosen lord, and by extension, the Golden Order itself. If Godfrey were to defeat you and take your place, he would reinstate the same brutal system as before. No mending runes to reform the Golden Order, and definitely no overturning it. He was and is a violent henchman for the status quo. And if you choose the Age of Fracture, so are you.
It's been a long while, Morgoth.
There are a couple cues in Godfrey's introductory cutscene that prompt this reading. You encounter Godfrey holding the corpse of Morgoth, his son. Morgoth here serves as a reminder of the brutality of the Golden Order. Marika and Godfrey imprisoned him with Mohg and the other royal-born Omen in the sewers below the capital, while their low-born brethren were only allowed above ground if they allowed themselves to be mutilated. Morgoth should remind the player of the racialized violence of the Golden Order, much of it committed by the man holding him. Morgoth's body then dissolves into the guidance of grace, which points Godfrey to you. Godfrey is the only other character in the game besides the player Tarnished who can still see the guidance of grace, drawing a parallel between his character and yours.
Spurned by the grace of gold.
He is symbolic of the old order and all its horrific practices, and you are the only thing standing in the way of that order reasserting itself. Conversely, you have borne witness over the course of the game to all those horrors, and if you choose to reinstate the old order without so much as a mending rune to try improving it, you are no better than Godfrey. You are either ignorant of the Golden Order's flaws or simply apathetic to them, taking the Elden Throne because it's what you were told to do.
Cross the fog to the lands between, to stand before the Elden Ring, and become the Elden Lord.
A tarnish that chooses the Age of Fracture is an unthinking agent of violence, a puppet for the status quo, whose only qualification for lordship was the brute strength to take it from everyone else. Choosing this ending reflects a philosophy that does not engage with flaws in the system, that assumes that the hierarchies of power are a natural and just function of the world. Those in power are there because they deserve to be, and anyone oppressed by the system must therefore deserve to be oppressed. After all, a crown is warranted with strength.
Brave, tarnished, thy strength befits a crown.
In a sense, the Age of Fracture is a default. It is a reflection of what came before, the miserable status quo of the Lands Between. While I do feel the game avoids framing any ending as simply good or bad, the Age of Fracture does stack the deck thematically in a couple ways. Calling the business as usual ending an Age of Fracture says in no uncertain terms that the system is broken and stays broken unless the player considers a change in the form of the other 5 endings. I also think it was a very specific choice to make the ending cutscenes for the Reform endings virtually identical. It implies a thematic uniformity, that the differences in mending runes and, by extension, the philosophies they represent, are mostly aesthetic, more meaningfully alike than they are different. To repair the Elden Ring in any way is to reinstate the oppressive Golden Order with a different coat of paint. The animation team spent time on showing a bridge emerge from lava. If they felt it was important to distinguish the Reform endings with different cutscenes, I have to imagine they would have found time to do so. But that's a topic for later videos. In the next video, we'll discuss the Age of Order. I hope you'll join me.